Let's talk about something you've probably seen, maybe without even thinking twice about it. A wall of shame in a local store. You know, those photos of alleged shoplifters taped up by the register? It seems pretty straightforward, but that one simple act kicks off this huge, fascinating debate about privacy, culture, and what's right versus what's legal. So today, we're going to dive into the amazing research behind these shoplifting walls. All right, so imagine this. You walk into a supermarket, you're grabbing some groceries, and you see it. A bulletin board covered with grainy CCTV photos of people, and they're labeled as shoplifters. What's your first reaction? Is this totally fine, a good way to stop crime, or does it feel, I don't know, a little off, like a step too far into public shaming? Well, it turns out, whatever your gut reaction was, you are definitely not alone. This whole practice creates a massive divide in how people see it. And to really get why it's so divisive, we've got to look at this fundamental clash between community norms and the official letter of the law. And this, right here, lays out the central conflict perfectly. On one side, you have the community view, especially in a lot of Chinatown supermarkets, where this is just normal. It's seen as a practical, effective way to prevent theft. But then on the other side, you've got the US legal perspective, which looks at this and just sees a legal minefield, a practice that's absolutely loaded with risk. See, for the actual store owners, the people on the ground, this isn't some abstract legal debate. You ask them, and their attitude is pretty straightforward. Okay, we always do it, and we'll keep doing it. To them, this is just a necessary tool for survival, a form of self-policing to protect their business. They really don't see what the big deal is. But then you talk to a lawyer, and their whole framework is different. They don't really see it as a simple legal or illegal question. For them, it's all about risk. It's a spectrum. It's not if it's legal, but how high is the risk of getting sued for defamation or something similar? And get this, that risk is all over the map depending on which state you're in, which makes it a really murky legal area. And you see this exact same cultural split play out in the media. Chinese language newspapers, they often cover this as a totally defensible, even necessary action for small business owners trying to protect themselves. But then you look at mainstream outlets like the New York Times, and the framing is completely different. They tend to see it as a pretty clear violation of privacy, a kind of modern-day public shaming. And this isn't just about media opinions. It's baked into official American business culture, too. Researchers dug into dozens of retail management handbooks, and you know what? The advice was unanimous. Just don't do it. Publicly displaying photos is a huge no-no. But what's really interesting is the line they draw. Sharing photos internally with your staff to prevent future theft, that's often seen as okay. But the public wall, that's the line you just don't cross. So we've got this massive disagreement, right? How can two groups look at the exact same thing and see it in completely opposite ways? Well, to unlock the why behind all this, we need to bring in a really important idea from privacy research, and it's all about something called context. So the key idea is this theory called Contextual Integrity, or CI for short. And it's brilliant. It basically says that privacy isn't really about keeping secrets. It's about making sure information flows in ways that are appropriate and expected for a specific situation. You know, what's totally fine to share with your doctor is very different from what's fine to post on social media. It's all about the context. So if we use the CI idea as our lens, the shoplifting walls start to look a little different. Instead of just a violation of US law, you can see it as the enforcement of a totally different set of rules, what the researchers call an Outlier Privacy Law that was created by the community for the community. Within the specific context of that supermarket, sharing that information is seen as perfectly appropriate. So, how do researchers actually use this CI thing? Well, they break it down with a pretty straightforward framework. They ask these key questions. Who's seeing this information? Why do they claim they're sharing it? What are the possible bad outcomes here? And how does the community actually react? By looking at all these pieces, they can figure out if the practice really does fit the unspoken rules of that specific context. Okay, so you might be thinking, this is a really specific thing, just for one community, right? Well, not so fast. The research shows this is just the tip of the iceberg. This kind of thing is happening way more than you'd think. We're seeing this same kind of informal justice pop up all over the place. It's in Korean-owned stores here in the US. It's in Singapore's Chinatown. It's even happening on university campuses. And it's evolving. It's not just staying on physical walls anymore. Oh no, it's gone digital, with wall of shame groups popping up all over social media. And that right there completely changes the game. This is no longer just a story about a local community's practice. It suddenly becomes part of this huge global conversation about how different cultures and communities are all trying to define privacy and justice for themselves, especially now, in the digital age. So, after all that, where does this leave us? Well, the research doesn't really hand us any simple answers. Instead, it leaves us with some really powerful questions that kind of force us to rethink what privacy even means in our world today. First, think about this puzzle. Privacy laws can be wildly different from one US state to the next. And yet, this unwritten privacy law that says shoplifting walls are okay, it's remarkably consistent in Chinatowns in different cities, even in different countries. So it really makes you wonder, right? Can these unwritten cultural norms actually be stronger than the official law on the books? And then, of course, you have to factor in the internet. A photo on a wall inside a store is seen by a pretty limited group of people. The context is contained. But the second that photo gets posted online, its context just shatters. It can be seen by anyone, anywhere, forever. How does that completely change the math on what's appropriate? Which all leads to this final and maybe most important question. What is privacy really about? Is it defined by the laws of the land you happen to be standing on? Or is it defined by the norms of the people you're with, your community? The story of the shoplifting wall suggests the answer, well, it's way more complicated than we might think.